daughter-in-law from my son's second marriage, who arrived with 6 children of her own from 3 past marriages, hauls us to court demanding that we give a fair share of our inheritance to her children along with all the other grandchildren. But when the court delivered its final verdict, it turns out that the judge wants them to pay us money instead for psychological distress. They suddenly want to let go of all the misunderstandings. Sometimes life throws you a curveball so unthinkable, so utterly outrageous, that you wonder if you've stepped into a twisted movie plot. Can you even imagine being dragged to court by your own daughter-in-law? Not because of a family disagreement, but because she believes her kids, 6 children from her previous marriages, are entitled to your life savings? And then the jaw-dropping moment. The judge doesn't just side with us, he orders her to pay us for our emotional distress. What the hell happened next, you ask? Oh, let me tell you. My husband, Robert, and I'm 65 and he's 68. We've always prided ourselves on building a close-knit, supportive family. We raised our 3 children, Mark, Emily, and Josh, on good old-fashioned values. Hard work, honesty, and family first. We scrimped, we saved, we planned for decades. Also, we could leave a modest nest egg to our kids and grandkids. It was our legacy, our final act of love. And that's why what unfolded recently was just unbelievable. Our eldest, Mark, was married to Laura for 10 years. They had 2 beautiful children, Amy and Ben. Even after their divorce, which was entirely amicable, we stayed close with Laura. She was a wonderful mother, a respectful ex-daughter-in-law, and honestly, I loved her like my own. Mark and Laura always put their kids first, and we admired them for that. Laura was family, always would be. Then 3 years ago, Mark met Sarah. She was a colleague, 38 years old. Their romance was a whirlwind, caught us completely by surprise. But Mark seemed happy, so we opened our arms and welcomed her into our lives. Now, Sarah had been married 3 times before, and she brought with her 6 children, ranging from 4 to 16. We knew this would be a major adjustment for Mark, but we truly hoped he'd found happiness. Our motto has always been, the more the merrier, so we embraced her and her kids. We included them in every family gathering, every holiday, even our trips to Disneyland with the grandkids. We even helped Mark and Sarah financially when they needed a bigger home to fit everyone. We thought it was a gesture of love, a way to strengthen our family ties. We genuinely wanted them to have a comfortable life. But that goodwill, it started taking a very different turn. Slowly, subtly at first, Sarah began showing an intense curiosity about our finances. A few questions about retirement plans, future expenses. We just assumed she was being thoughtful, making sure we were prepared. But then her comments became less subtle, more direct. She started making these snide, passive-aggressive remarks about how all the grandchildren should be treated equally in our will. Robert and we tried to explain gently that while we cared deeply for her kids, our resources were finite. We'd always planned for our biological grandchildren. Those conversations? They didn't go well, so we just started avoiding the topic. Then came the moment we decided to update our will. We called a family meeting, Mark, Sarah, Emily, and Joshua. We even considered asking Laura, since her kids were involved, but she gracefully declined, saying Sarah might not appreciate her husband's ex being there. We respected that. So we disclosed our plan. Our estate would be divided equally among our children, with specific funds set aside for the education and future of Mark, Emily, and Josh's kids. Everyone seemed delighted. Emily even told us not to worry about her, but we insisted. It was our duty as parents. And then Sarah spoke. By Mark's kids, she said, her voice dripping with an almost innocent curiosity that I immediately knew was anything but, "You also mean my 6 children, right?" My heart sank. I knew this was coming. I calmly told her that we genuinely wished we could provide for them. But as we'd explained, our priority was our biological children and grandchildren. Her reaction was explosive. She accused us of favoritism, of discrimination. She even said we were punishing her children for circumstances beyond their control. Mark, bless his heart, he tried to calm her down, but it was clear he was torn, caught between his new wife and his own parents. The meeting ended on a sour note, with Sarah storming out, Mark trailing behind her, trying to placate her. The tension didn't stop there. For weeks, Sarah's attitude grew more confrontational. She started spreading rumors throughout the family, calling us greedy, unfair. She even began telling her own children that we didn't see them as part of the family. It created such a toxic environment, straining our relationships with Mark and our other children. We tried to fix it. We suggested Mark and Sarah make separate financial provisions for her children. We even offered to help them set up savings accounts. But Sarah was relentless. She insisted all children, biological or not, deserved an equal share of our estate. And then it escalated to a level we never, ever expected. One evening, we received a court summons. Sarah had actually sued us. She was demanding that her children be included in our inheritance plans, claiming that by excluding them, we were causing them emotional distress and creating an unfair family dynamic. We were absolutely devastated. Never in a million years did we imagine our own daughter-in-law would take such extreme measures. The legal battle that followed? Was brutal. It drained us emotionally and financially. Sarah's legal team painted us as outdated, discriminatory, uncaring. It was humiliating, exhausting. We were just shocked, so incredibly hurt. This wasn't how we envisioned our retirement years. We had no choice but to hire a lawyer to defend ourselves. To make matters worse, the lawsuit tore our extended family apart. Some relatives, especially those who only heard Sarah's twisted version, sided with her. She spun these elaborate tales about how we ignored her kids, isolated them, even told them to sit in another room during family gatherings. It was all completely untrue. We treated those kids just like our own. Honestly, if I heard that story from someone else, I probably would have been convinced we were evil. So I couldn't even blame our friends and family for believing her. But Emily and Josh, our children, they stood by us, insisting we had every right to distribute our assets as we saw fit. Family gatherings became battlegrounds. You could cut the tension with a knife. Throughout it all, we tried to maintain a relationship with all our grandchildren, including Sarah's kids. But it was clear Sarah had poisoned their minds against us. She'd cancel visits last minute, make excuses, even accuse us of favoring Amy and Ben in front of the other kids. It was heartbreaking. Our lawyer, who had been a rock through this nightmare, initially warned us. It felt like we were losing. Sarah had built a compelling narrative, portraying herself as a victim of our supposed unfairness. For a while, it seemed like the court was actually leaning in her direction, making us fear the worst. But we weren't giving up. Our lawyer, tenacious as ever, decided to dig deeper into Sarah's past. She reached out to one of Sarah's ex-husbands, just to get some background. What started as a simple check for behavior during their relationship quickly turned into a monumental breakthrough. During that conversation, it was revealed. He'd been paying child support for 3 of Sarah's children. No one in our family knew this. Whenever it came up, Sarah would dramatically claim she hadn't received a penny from any of her ex-husbands, that she'd raised all 6 kids completely alone. We'd been surprised then, but we'd applauded her courage. Now we knew the truth. But our lawyer wasn't done. While this was unexpected, it still wasn't enough for all 6 kids. She kept digging. To our absolute shock, it turned out Sarah had been receiving substantial child support payments from all 3 of her ex-husbands. She'd never, ever mentioned this in court. The total amount was more than enough to provide for her 6 children. Yet, Sarah had been pretending to be financially strapped, making it seem like she needed our inheritance and Mark's support. This discovery? It was a game changer. Our lawyer compiled all the evidence and presented it to the court. The revelation was explosive. Sarah had been hiding her financial situation, misleading the court, trying to manipulate us emotionally. The courtroom atmosphere shifted dramatically. The judge was not amused. Sarah's earlier claims of financial hardship were suddenly called into question. The judge's questions became sharp, demanding explanations for Sarah's failure to disclose her true financial status. Sarah struggled. Her carefully constructed facade of a struggling single mother crumbled before our eyes. The more the judge probed, the more apparent it became that she had been utterly dishonest. In the heat of the moment, her attempts to argue the child support wasn't enough fell completely flat. The judge's frustration was palpable. Her credibility? Gone. As Sarah's credibility unraveled, the courtroom filled with whispers, with shocked glances. The judge's final questions were damning, challenging Sarah's integrity, her very intentions. The room was tense. I could see the judge's displeasure. And Mark. I could tell this was unexpected news for him too. He looked as surprised as we were, but for him, it must have been so much more painful. He'd stood up for his wife against his own family, only to find out she'd been hiding this entire time. It must have been heartbreaking. In the end, the court ruled decisively in our favor. The judge upheld our right to distribute our assets as we saw fit. And then came the part that truly stunned us. He ordered Sarah to compensate us for the emotional distress and legal fees she had caused with her frivolous lawsuit. On top of that, she was charged a penalty for concealing her assets from the court. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read. Sarah's face went white. Mark looked utterly defeated. As we were leaving the courthouse, Sarah approached us. Her entire demeanor had changed. She wasn't the aggressive, entitled woman who dragged us through months of hell. Instead, she was small, meek almost. She suddenly wanted to settle things, suggesting we should let go of all the misunderstandings and move forward as a family. She had her kids with her, and actually had the gall to say that Mark and the children wouldn't be able to handle this sort of emotional distress. We were too stunned, too speechless. We just walked away. So now, here we are. Liberated by the court's decision, yes, but our relationship with Mark is deeply strained. And Sarah's sudden change of heart? After everything she put us through? It feels completely insincere. The day after the verdict, Mark called. He sounded utterly exhausted, his voice heavy with something I hadn't heard in a long time: regret. He asked if he could come over to talk, just him, without Sarah. Robert and I agreed. We knew this conversation was long overdue. When he arrived, the sight of him broke my heart. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, his appearance disheveled. The moment he sat down, the weight of the past few months seemed to crush him. He just broke down, sobbing into his hands. We sat there, just letting him get it all out. When he finally spoke, it was an outpouring of apologies. Mark admitted he had failed us. Failed to stand up to Sarah. Failed to protect us from the turmoil. He had failed himself. He confessed that Sarah had been pressuring him for months to convince us to change our will, always framing it as fairness, insisting her children deserved just as much as our biological grandchildren. When he tried to reason with her, she grew more insistent, even threatening to leave him if he didn't support her in the lawsuit. He felt trapped, he said, torn between his wife and his parents. He knew deep down her demands were unreasonable, but he felt powerless. He was so afraid of losing his marriage that he let Sarah take the lead, even though he knew it was wrong. It was clear this whole situation had been eating him alive, and now, with the court's decision, the full weight had come crashing down. He even revealed that this wasn't the first time Sarah had caused issues. Apparently, she had a history of financial disputes with her ex-husband's families. When they first got together, he'd noticed a pattern. Sarah always seemed to be in the middle of some conflict, usually about money. He'd brushed it off then, chalking it up to a difficult past. Now, he realized it was a giant, waving red flag he should have paid more attention to. We talked for hours that night, Mark pouring his heart out, his fears for the future, his deep regrets. Robert and I just listened, offering our love, our reassurance. We told him that while we couldn't change the past, we would support him, no matter what decisions he made about his marriage. We urged him to consider counseling for himself, and with Sarah, to work through the issues that had brought them to this point. The next day, Laura, Mark's first wife, called us. She'd heard about the court case from Amy and Ben, who were understandably upset. Laura, who has always been a steady, calming presence in our lives, offered her unwavering support. She thanked us for always being fair and loving grandparents, and expressed her sadness over what had happened. She had already spoken to Amy and Ben, reassuring them that they were loved, that this conflict didn't change how much we cared. Her kindness, her understanding, it was a balm to our weary hearts. As for Sarah, we hadn't heard directly from her since the courthouse. But through the family grapevine, we learned she was still trying to garner sympathy, portraying herself as a victim of our cruelty. She was spinning a tale about how we mistreated her and her children, using the court's verdict as evidence of our unfairness. Some relatives, those not privy to all the details, were swayed. They still saw us as the villains. But thankfully, others have seen through her act, recognizing it for what it is: a desperate attempt to shift blame and avoid responsibility. In the midst of all this, we decided to focus on what matters most: healing our relationship with Mark and maintaining strong bonds with all our grandchildren. The court's decision may have settled the legal matter, but the emotional wounds, those will take time. We decided to seek family counseling. It's not just about moving forward. It's about rebuilding the trust and love that has been so damaged. For now, we're taking things one day at a time. There's still so much uncertainty, but we're determined to stay strong as a family. Then, just when I thought the dust was beginning to settle, things took an unexpected, truly disturbing turn. A new crisis emerged, shaking us to our core. Yesterday morning, while Robert and I were watching Josh's kids, we received an unexpected visit from Child Protective Services, CPS, at our doorstep. We had no idea what could have prompted it, but the moment the worker introduced herself and mentioned an anonymous report of emotional abuse and neglect of Sarah's children, it didn't take long for us to suspect who was behind it. The CPS worker explained they had to investigate all reports. It was a routine inquiry, she said, but the implications were terrifying. The idea that someone, almost certainly Sarah, had made such a serious, false accusation against us was both infuriating and deeply unsettling. She spoke with us individually, then did a thorough inspection of our home. Every room, every closet. Robert and I cooperated fully, explaining everything. The recent court case, the ongoing conflict. We even showed her documentation from the court proceedings. As the visit continued, the CPS worker's initial formality began to soften. She seemed to understand this was more than just a family dispute. It was a case of malicious retribution. She reassured us that, based on her assessment, there was no evidence to support the claims. She thanked us for our cooperation and left, promising a written report. The whole experience left me shaken. We'd been through so much, but this felt like a new low. It's one thing to be dragged to court over money, but to be accused of harming children, especially children we'd tried so hard to welcome into our family, was devastating. Later that afternoon, Mark called. He was frantic. He'd just found out about the CPS visit and was horrified. He was in full-blown panic mode, his voice trembling. He confirmed our suspicions. Sarah was behind it. According to Mark, when Sarah found out he had visited us alone, she flew into a rage. She accused him of betraying her, and in her fury, she threatened to make us pay for what she perceived as a slight. Mark was distraught. He told us Sarah had become increasingly erratic since the court verdict, lashing out at him, at the kids, refusing to let go of her anger. She was trying to manipulate the situation, using every tactic she could think of to maintain control, even if it meant tearing the family apart. During our conversation, Mark revealed something even more concerning. He had been in contact with a divorce lawyer. This wasn't a decision he made lightly, but after everything that had happened, he realized Sarah's behavior was toxic, not just to us, but to him and all the children involved. He was deeply worried about the impact on Amy and Ben, and even Sarah's kids. He'd been doing a lot of soul-searching, he said, and now he saw Sarah's true colors more clearly than ever. The CPS incident? That was the final straw. He couldn't continue living in fear of what Sarah might do next. He certainly couldn't allow her to keep using the children as pawns in her twisted game. We advised Mark to document everything. Every incident, every conversation, every threat. We emphasized the importance of prioritizing the well-being of all the children and urged him to take whatever steps necessary to protect them. As for us, we've taken additional precautions. We've installed security cameras around our property, just in case Sarah decides to escalate things further. The last thing we want is for this to spiral into something even more dangerous. We're also keeping a close eye on our interactions with family, knowing that anything we say or do could be twisted and used against us. The family is still divided, but the tide is slowly turning. More and more relatives are seeing Sarah's true colors. They're realizing this isn't just a misunderstood daughter-in-law trying to do right by her kids. This is something far more malicious. Sarah's actions have gone beyond what anyone could consider reasonable. The lengths she's willing to go to get her way are becoming terrifyingly apparent. We're doing our best to stay calm, to not engage directly with Sarah, following our lawyer's advice. It's hard, especially seeing the toll this is taking on Mark and the children. But we know reacting impulsively would only play into Sarah's hands. Right now, we're focused on supporting Mark. He's made it clear he wants out of this toxic marriage, but he's worried about what that will mean for his stepchildren, who have already been through so much. Mark is a good man, and he's trying to do the right thing by everyone, even as his own world is falling apart. As for us, we're just trying to keep our heads above water. This whole ordeal has been exhausting. But one thing is for certain, we will not let Sarah's manipulations tear our family apart. We'll keep fighting. We'll keep protecting the ones we love, no matter what. A few days ago, Mark made the agonizing decision to move out of the house he shared with Sarah. He's staying with a close friend while he figures out his next steps. This came after a series of truly shocking revelations about Sarah's continued manipulative behavior. Mark discovered Sarah had been secretly contacting his ex-wife, Laura, with alarming claims. She told Laura that Mark had been drinking heavily, had become aggressive, even suggesting Laura shouldn't allow Amy and Ben near him for their safety. Laura, to her immense credit, saw right through Sarah's lies. She immediately informed Mark about Sarah's deceitful attempts to turn her against him. Laura's support has been unparalleled, a crucial anchor for Mark during this chaotic time. We are so incredibly grateful for her clarity and strength. And as if that wasn't enough, Sarah's lies didn't stop there. She reached out to Emily and Josh, further spreading chaos. She told them we didn't care about them or their children, and that everything was going to be given to Mark in the end. Apparently, Sarah had overheard a conversation between Mark and Robert, which she twisted to fit her narrative. Emily and Josh immediately saw through Sarah's erratic behavior and confronted her directly. When Sarah realized her manipulation was failing, she just abruptly ended the call. It just showed her desperation, her volatility. This latest betrayal was the absolute last straw for Mark. He has since filed for divorce from Sarah and is seeking full custody of Amy and Ben. He's also working closely with his lawyer to address that false CPS report Sarah filed. The gravity of the situation has finally hit home for Mark, and he's determined to protect his children and ensure Sarah's attempts to manipulate and deceive are properly dealt with in court. Sarah, now facing the fallout from her failed schemes, has tried to contact us multiple times. Tearful voicemails, profuse apologies, begging us to convince Mark to give her another chance. We've chosen not to respond to her overtures. Instead, we're keeping all communications for potential legal use, making sure we have a complete record of her attempts to mend fences in the wake of her failed manipulations. In the midst of all this turmoil, we've had the chance to spend some much-needed time with Amy and Ben. Sarah hadn't left them in peace either. Looking back, they started recalling incidents when Sarah made them feel left out. She would often compare Amy's achievements to her own daughters, and once told them they were too reliant on their father. They are understandably shaken by everything, and we've done our best to reassure them of our unwavering love and support. We're working with Mark to ensure they have access to therapy to help them process everything. Their emotional well-being is our top priority. Regarding Sarah's children, our concern for their well-being remains strong, despite the conflict with Sarah. We truly don't want our kids to feel abandoned or rejected by the family they've been a part of for years. Mark agrees with us and is exploring ways to maintain a relationship with them, potentially through supervised visitation, depending on the outcome of the divorce. We truly hope to continue being a positive presence in their lives. The extended family has largely rallied around us and Mark in recent days. Those who initially sided with Sarah have reached out to apologize after learning the full extent of her actions. We're slowly rebuilding those relationships, reestablishing trust and understanding. It's a long road, but we're hopeful we can mend these familial bonds. Through this entire grueling experience, we've learned some valuable lessons. While we don't regret our initial decision about our will, we've recognized that our communication about our intentions could have been clearer from the outset. In light of everything, we've decided to set up a small trust specifically for Sarah's children's education, separate from our main will. It's not as substantial as what we set aside for the others, but we hope it will provide some support and truly demonstrate that our issue was never with Sarah's children themselves. Looking ahead, our focus is on healing as a family. We're continuing with family counseling to help navigate these complex emotions and dynamics. We're also taking proactive steps to legally protect ourselves from any further attempts by Sarah to cause trouble. Mark is making progress each day, though he has a challenging road ahead with the divorce and custody proceedings. We're optimistic about the future, and so incredibly grateful for the strength our family has shown in facing this crisis together. So tell me, what would you have done in our place? Have you ever had someone try to manipulate your family like this? I really want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments below.